of truth. This way of life known as Islam will rise to its proper position in this world, whether the mushriks like it or not. Alhamdulillah, this is what, the 17th? Yeah, this is the 17th of September and 2017, and we want to deal with a very unique subject today. This is a subject that has taken a lot of time to get here. We went through several changes through many stages as a movement and as an organization. So we want to explain this final stage. Lately we've been talking about the subject of leaderless resistance. Leaderless resistance. Before that, we talked about strategy, and after that we talked about strategic management under conditions of repression. Before that, we talked about generally about goal setting, about goal clarity, having clear, concise, almost semi-specific goals, and also goal difficulty. And if you have goals, how much difficulty will it take for you to reach those goals? How many challenges, how many obstacles will you have to face? And also we talked about goal commitment. If you have goals, if there's going to be some difficulty, then how much commitment does it take to reach those goals? I'd like to begin by saying that yesterday was Dick Gregory's janazah. He passed almost a couple of weeks ago, 10 days ago. And on that, yesterday they had his janazah. And that janazah must have went on for 6 to 8 hours. It was longer than marriage, I think. When I was in my early teens, is when I first heard Dick Gregory, maybe around 1960, 1961. He was one of our great modern comics, but a conscious comic. And he talked about the new Negro. He talked about the new Negro in Harlem that has Wall Street Journal on the top and Jet and Ebony in between. So a couple of years later, he became very conscious. And he became well known throughout the world as an activist for civil rights and civil liberties and a fighter for truth and justice. A few years ago, not a few years ago, I would say about 12, maybe 15 years, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, we got some MP3 CDs with the 30 lectures or 30 lectures of Malcolm X. One of those lectures was given by Malcolm X's friend, who was Dick Gregory. Now, I knew about Dick Gregory very well. We all did here. But I didn't know how deep he was until I heard the 1964 lecture by Dick Gregory concerning the CIA, concerning its modes of operation and what have you. This is when I realized why Dick Gregory was so heavy into conspiracy theories. he got hooked up in the early 60s and he was right. Then we started talking about other subjects, psychological guerrilla warfare, and all types of subjects relating to that. And then we talked about that we talked about strategic management. We're going to start talking about science fiction management. Science fiction management means that we have dealt fully with strategic management, with COINTEL program. But we ourselves had came in contact with what you might call science fiction management. That means the things that happen that definitely don't nobody see but you. They are real. The government uses these processes, and we don't know how long they've been using them, but definitely on us, we know they've been present for decades. Okay? So, if you notice, we never related any of those stories about science fiction management. It's because as you evolve along the procession intellectually, and you have contact with the government, you have levels of fitna. The levels of fitna, the levels of contact that you have will relate to your, if you stick to it, level of progress. So if you're here and you have maximum contact with the government, maximum contact with the state, maximum contact with feds, if you are having contact with security apparatuses all around the world, then you're going to progress way in front of everybody else. It's like you're a boxer and you have championship fights all the time. And everybody else is reading books and listening to lectures on fighting, but they're not going to get that much better. But you're fighting the greatest champions in the world, right? So therefore, or you're playing. You're not a bench warmer, you in every game. All around the world. You're playing here in the US, you're playing in the European League, you're playing in South Africa, you're playing in East Africa, you're playing everywhere. Guess what you're going to do? You are going to improve way in advance of everybody else. Now, a real strategic personality will know how to interrupt his, not progress, he'll continue to progress, but how to standardize the delivery on what they're coming in contact with. Because in order to be effective, you have to be somewhere in line with where the people are. You have to start not where you are, but you have to start with where the people are. Because you're trying to relate to the people. Now here's one thing. You may have to you may have to come in contact. It's recorded. You may have to come in contact with all types of people. Now, the thing is how to elevate people step by step, stage by stage, till they reach a level of effectiveness. So you, in order to be a good teacher, especially if you are a documentalist, you're going to document what you're doing. You're a strategist. You're a chronicler. You're chronicling all of these events. You're researching all of these events. What the people do, what the government do, how it all acts and interact. You're dealing with the whole situation. But you're also a teacher, so you have to take all of the information that you've chronicled, you have to take all the archives that you've established, separate those archives in different places where they can't be knocked over at once. And then you have to implement. Now, in the first stages, you have to start where the people are and raise them step by step, level by level. If you notice, the things that we talk about are repetitive. They're repetitive because the Quran is repetitive. They're repetitive also because we said we're going to have 5, maybe 6 subjects for the next several years. Why? Because if we fully exploit each level and each subject from our study, from our case study, when we talk about College of Islamic Studies, Islamic Movement Studies, when we write it down, that means we've already done it or we're doing it right then. When we say in a flyer, we're going to use such and such as a case study, that means we've already done that. So that means the difference between us and Dick Gregory was not necessarily our contact with the system, but our delivery. Here's the thing, we realized that we had to slow down. Why? What's the difference? Because we have been heavily involved in implementing what we came in contact with. We've been heavily involved in implementation. Remember, scan your environment, study the environment, the history, the behavior, all of the psychological and social processes. Study that, right? That means like scanning the environment. After you scan the environment, then you come up with a strategy, then you come up with a plan, then you do what? Implement that. This is the difference between most of the groups. They fall down in implementation, and then the last stage is accountability, where you go over what you've done, study and research yourself, then go back and start all over again. Okay, so that's what we've been doing. This subject of leaderless resistance is the last level that we have talked about. Leaderless resistance. Leaderless resistance comes about because all the studiers in the United States know that you cannot establish inside of the United States. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. You cannot establish inside of the United States a standard movement. And that standard movement would be free of a pyramid type movement. Like you got a general or a leader, you got a colonel, a couple of colonels, you have majors and captains, you know, a line organization. Or a stable leadership structure with a leader, a Majlis Ashura, all of those things, that knowing the history of the United States, you could not do that inside of the United States. That's where the Europeans came up with leaderless resistance. That they would, this is Louis Bean, by the way, and this idea is similar to what we've come across, but remember, your contact determines a lot about the speed of your development. We came into contact directly with the system before they did. We was born into an oppressive American system. In fact, yesterday when they was announcing Dick Gregory's program, they had a song on there. And that song had something to do with let the life I live speak for me. Boy, it's bad. It wouldn't be bad to y'all because it's a different generation. Remember, he was 84. And people who was picking the stuff would be of that generation. You can tell that the singers, it's a duo. Sullivan Pug and Iola Pug. You can tell the generations by the name. If you hear somebody named Ernie B, Ula B, or something like that, you knew that they was born around 1900 up to about 1935 or 40. Maybe even 50. If their name was Cheryl or Sherry or something like that, you know they was born could be 50s, 60s. If their name was Shaquana or something like that, you know that they was born from 2000s on. Rakika, you know, all of those, then the names don't mean nothing. They derive from Muslim names, but the Negro kept going and have no idea. Sometimes you talk to a sister, what's your name? My daughter's name is Sakina. What's your name you looking at? My name is Shaquina. Oh, how you doing, Shaquina? I don't know what it means, and neither does she, but it sounds modern. So, let the life I live speak for me. It means that let the life that a person live, the things that they've done. Dick Gregory, I'm telling you, he ran for president, I think on the Freedom and Justice Party in '68 or something like that. He fasted, ran marathons, he did all kind of stuff. Come out with Dick Gregory drinks that guarantee to lose. We did all kind of stuff. So that song, Let the Life I Live Speak for Me. And I'm sorry, this self stuff. But I thought about that, I said, good God, man. First of all, I was sitting there tripping, and I jumped in the car to go somewhere, and that just came on, and it hit like a ton of bricks. But it reminds, let the life you live speak for you. So I was on the internet, I was looking that up. And then my favorite song from back in the 50s, they're the ones that sang that song, but I didn't know it. So one sister Bahia's son was getting ready to get out of the joint, and she was going back and forth. She was just nervous. You got 1 more week, 2 more days. So I said, type this song up. It was Waiting for My Child to Come Home. This is an old song from the Negro days. It was my family's favorite song, and it was all about me, waiting for my child to come home. Because I was a bad little boy. That's what they were trying to get me to think. I was a good little boy, but the white folks had a fishing net that they throw out to catch little Negroes. They still got it, use the same net now. And so if you're not a handkerchief-headed baby or something, you're going to get caught in that net. So it said, guy speaking to a lady, and she's talking about she's waiting for a child to come home. He may be somewhere on his sick bed without anybody to rub his aching head. He may be in some lonely jail with no one to go his bail. And the song has a perfect mother spirit of those days. You got to remember how hard it was on mothers with black boys in those days. You know. So the final thing is that she's waiting for her child to come home. And no matter what the crime, I know the child is mine. It's very important. It don't mean nothing to people in modern times. Although the same thing is going on. You know, they had demonstrations yesterday. They have demonstrations all over America. You know why? Because they still shooting Negroes down in the street, and the police just walk away. Well, you know, they didn't shoot Negroes much in those days. They lynched them. And what people don't know is the history and the feeling of the South. They watch some of these movies about people hanging on trees. That's terrible. But they never lived there. That's a movie. Those movies cannot give you the feeling of oppression and depression and the feeling that you feel every day when you walk down the street and a white man and his woman is on the street and you got to step off the street and tip your hat and it's automatic. So the songs, all those songs are a replica of the life people was living. So many black males, after they was 13 or 14 and on up, they just got up and left. If you listen to all those old songs, you know, they didn't have telex, teletype, and email and all that, and they didn't hardly have, there was no way for you to find out about nothing. And your child may leave, and you never hear from them again. And if you do, you can pay attention to Howlin' Wolf's big song, you know. And it's one of the old blues songs, Going Down Slow. And he talked about, you know, if you see my mother, tell her goodbye for me, you know. And he's trying to get the message that he's been out living the life. He's going down slow. That means his health is going bad. Because remember, they're drinking rotten liquor. And if you was in a fight, we didn't shoot each other much, but we all carried knives and pistols. So people carried razors. Now, if you got sliced with a razor, even if it's a little nick, what are you going to do? Since they don't have any EMS coming back, they ain't even got no telephone to call you. You ain't got no telephone to call nobody. And if they did, they wouldn't be coming out to pick up no Negro, not in the South, right? So you died. Dick Gregory was born in that type of environment. A lot of us was born in that environment. So there's something that comes out of his life that we can relate to. He never considered not continuing the work that he was doing. We never heard him mention it. I feel the same way. I have never considered crawling on my hands and knees to California. I've never considered it. I've never considered trying to swim the Atlantic Ocean. It's only 41 square miles. I've never considered swimming the Pacific Ocean. Different measurements. One is 64 million square miles, and the other is 68 million square miles. Technically, I think this is. I've never considered swimming the Pacific Ocean. I've never considered turning around from this mission of this oppressor, the Zionist oppressor that we're living under. And any newspaper you open today is the same thing about us that you would get 80, 90 years ago. I was born in 1945 in Arkansas. And my own research showed, because I remember I was old enough to know what it was. And I went back in 1957, and I just saw a movie, Clark Gable, it was a good movie, called Band of Angels. So that's when I realized about slavery. I realized the dialogue in Band of Angels is better than the Black nationalist rendition. When Clark Gable was talking about he was in the nigger business and what he was doing in Africa, and he described it, and he described the chief and all. Hey, that is an exact description of the slave trade. So that summer, right after that, we went back to Arkansas, and I asked my grandmama. I said, "Grandmama, was you a slave?" She said, "No, I was born 6 years out of slavery. I was born in 1871. But old Miss So-and-so, old Mr. So-and-so was born a little baby as a slave." Now you got to remember, in 1957, that's only slavery ended in 1865, technically. Technically, that's whatever. So when I was born in 1945, anybody over 80 years old was born in slavery. 85 years. Everybody 80, wait a minute, everybody 80 years old. 45 and 35, yeah, is 80. Right. So by 1950, that means anybody born that's over 85 years old, and I'm conscious of it. So I can remember those old people. And all the little towns in the South was, everybody had been in that town since slavery. It wasn't like now people move here to there all around. Only thing you might move is from one plantation to another. But everybody knows everybody. I'm gonna get to the point is that there were people that I saw in my own lifetime. Because old Miss So-and-so, she was born up in slavery. She was old, she was about 95. That means she was about 12 to 15 years old. She lived through it, she worked through it. The other old man, he was just a little baby by the time he come, he wasn't doing no work or nothing. So there were people that are alive in my lifetime. Yes, thank you very much. No, don't worry, we'll take care of it. Thank you very much. So, I'll get back to the point. What is this? To me, Arkansas, Mississippi, and all of that was just like Reconstruction. Reconstruction was 1865 to up in the 1880s and 90s. That was Reconstruction. Technically, 1880s. Well, technically, it was only in 1880. They knocked that over real quick, you know. But the behavior of black people in those little towns in Mississippi and Arkansas and Louisiana was the same as Reconstruction. They felt the same awe and the power of the white man. in the 1940s and 50s that black people felt in Reconstruction. When I look at it, to me, it's the exact same attitude as Reconstruction. People talk about the 13th Amendment. They got this thing on TV about the 13th, you know, it's on Netflix. The 13th Amendment, why didn't the police shoot Negroes in the old days? They didn't have to. But the first thing they was going to do is they was going to get gaffled up and put in jail. Why? They have chain gangs, they have work gangs, and the sheriff's job was to keep in every little town, a big town even, they had a big rich white man. In our town, it was Ben Word. So my birth certificate it says was born on the Word place. We had property of our own, but we also worked on the Word place. You go to that little town right now, the main street is Word Street, you know, and all. I don't want to go into I was doing some filming down there last year. And I was showing this Iranian guy where the bayou was, the bayou run. So I was down there showing, it's more like a sewer now, but in those days we swam in it, it was fish in there and he caught fish, everything. So as we was filming it, an old white man on a tractor came out of there and I said, I was just asking him questions. I said, what happened to the black school that was right over there? He said, he said, I was asking him about all of that. I said, do you remember the Reams family that used to live right over there? He said, yeah, I remember the name. I remember very well. He said, my daddy was a town marshal and the mayor at times, Marshall Garrett. I said, oh yeah, Marshall Garrett. He had a 1951 Mercury and da-da-da-da. And he said, well, he mentions other big white, of course we remember, you know all the big white folks' names. WWS, I said, I haven't heard that name in 70 years, 60 years, but I remember WWS. I didn't know him, but I remember all those big white folks. The white man would catch you and put you in jail for bubble gum or anything. It didn't make no difference. Why? Because part of the sheriff's hustle was, I'm going to rent these niggas out to work for big Mr. So-and-so, for a little big Mr. So-and-so, whoever it is can afford it. Not can afford it, but whoever it is big white friends. Because the towns was all the same. The big white man ran the town. The sheriff and everybody, just like on the movies. And if he rented the niggas out for 25 cents a day to do work. Now you know regular work, you may make $1 a day. You know, so if you rent the niggas out to do the hardest work you can think of, out of the jail. Remember the old law, we sentence you, the 13th Amendment said that slavery is abolished except under what circumstances? Commission of felonies. You may not watch the old Western movies. I sentence you to 5 years at what? Hard labor. It's part of the sentence. Because the Constitution allowed that. So what is all the niggas gonna get? You think you're gonna do like you do in Maryland, go to the penitentiary and sit up there and watch TV, or walk up and down the hallway, go out to the wake pile. No siree, not in those days. Hard labor. It was a business. It was a job of the sheriff to catch and corral niggas. It's the job not only down there, but up here too, to catch Negroes and rent them out. Down south, they rented them out on chain gangs. Up here, it's the same thing. You see the buses right now out there from the University of Maryland, right? I'm not university, but the Penitentiary, Maryland, Jessup or something, on any highway, where there's a whole group of Negroes, one white boy maybe, the big trash bags, picking up trash and doing anything else. They're working. I'm sure state of Maryland, like California, they got firefighters. You know, I'm an expert firefighter, because what it is, forest fire. They send you to forestry camp to do what? Fight forestry, pull trees. They paid us. They paid us 50 cents a day, you know, in the 60s. That's big money for all that work. Fighting forest fires, bugging trees, doing all the conservation work, basically for free. You see what I mean? This is the system is like that now. Why are they shooting Negroes? They don't need them anymore. They're in the way, so we just shoot them. But never would I don't want to go back into this Southern stuff, but I asked my father, I said, do they still have a system? Or what did they stop the system of angels? An angel is a white man. Like, for instance, you killed me, another nigga. Now, you might get a little time. You might get 90 days so that you could get a couple of, you ain't gonna get the electric jet, you ain't gonna go do all that stuff. But if you work for Mr. Word, you know what Mr. Word? Mr. Word, suppose Mr. Word was over in England somewhere and come back and they done put his nigga in the penitentiary by mistake. Do you know that Mr. Word can go to Cummings, the state penitentiary in Arkansas, and tell them, y'all got my nigga in there. That's my main nigga. Don't talk about the county jail. First of all, when he get arrested, they gonna call, everybody gonna be waiting for where's old Mose? Boss man, Mose, and put him in the jail. And he got a telephone. He just called the jail and said, you got my nigga down there? So I said, yeah, I got him down here. He shot another nigga that is over the dice game, and he been over here making that corn liquor. And so I got him in. So I will send that nigga on over here. Simple as that. You couldn't go to jail if you had an angel, a white man that had authority.